So hello, everyone. My name is Kwame Bonsu, and this presentation is in regards to my co-op experience working at Enserp. So this presentation will cover who Enserp is as an organization, some of my daily activities and projects, and then finally, my reflections about this whole co-op experience. All right, so firstly, what is Enserp? So the Natural Sciences and Engineering Research Council of Canada, also known as Enserp, is a federal agency that funds visionaries, explorers, and innovators who are searching for the scientific and technical breakthroughs that will benefit our country. Enserp is the largest supporter of discovery and innovation in Canada, and we work with universities, colleges, businesses, and not-for-profits to remove barriers, develop opportunities, and to attract new expertise to make Canada's research community thrive. So also Enserp is one of the three main funding agencies in Canada, along with the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council of Canada, which, as you can imagine, covers social sciences and humanities research, and the Canadian Institutes on Health Research, also known as CIHR, which covers health research and then also clinical trials as well. So each of the three main funding agencies cater to their own specific sector, I guess, of the research community. And as you can imagine, an agency that funds scientific research would play a pivotal role in the COVID-19 pandemic. So Enserp set up the COVID-19 Alliance grants, providing millions of dollars in support to stimulate collaborations between academic researchers, the public, and the private sector, along with industry to address any pandemic-related research and technical challenges. So since August, 317 projects have been funded, totaling over $15 million. So it's been really interesting to see how a federal agency of this magnitude is helping to at least try to mitigate the pandemic and the effects of the pandemic in Canada. All right, so just a few logistics about my experience. Due to the pandemic, I actually returned back to Winnipeg, Manitoba, where I currently am, before the beginning of my first co-op term, which didn't really change much due to the fact that the Enserp workplace was actually closed at the time, so all employers were also working remotely at the time as well. I did both of my co-op terms with Enserp, the first one spanning from May to August, and then the second one from September to December. And both terms actually went so well that I, just like Delphine, also signed a part-time student contract after 2 co-op terms, which I'm currently in. And on the bright side, everything's going well so far, so no complaints there. And finally, some of my general daily duties included drafting quotes for partnership announcements, attending meetings, doing media monitoring for a few different initiatives that we had going on, and things of that nature. But for this presentation, I decided to focus on the 2 main projects that I worked on throughout my, I guess, 8 months of my co-op term. So we'll discuss those next. All right, so my first project was one of the largest that I worked on in my first co-op term, which was the Research Grants and Scholarships video conferences. So typically the RGS team would travel across Canada, delivering presentations to students and fellows regarding the different programs that Enserp offers, the different programs and grants. However, in consideration of the coronavirus pandemic, Enserp made the decision to move those sessions into online conferences, which would be supported with a series of instructional videos that would be found on our YouTube page that would be rolled out in a staggered fashion, depending on when they were needed. So in this capacity, I acted as a project manager of sorts between all the moving parts. So my main tasks were liaising with our clients and the different departments involved, while also developing and editing news material and different types of reports. So again, due to the coronavirus pandemic, the way the RGS videos file came to us was a bit of a surprise to my colleagues and myself, because as I said before, typically these things would be delivered in person, but within the timeline between when everything shut down and when the actual presentation would have begun, there was only, I think, a few weeks between that period of time. So in a typical situation, a considerable amount of time be spent planning and detailing a video database of this magnitude, but as I said, some of the products in this, some of the videos that we would have needed for this, this database would be needed in a matter of weeks, so we didn't have as much time as we had anticipated. So the process that ensued demonstrates an example of strategic management and communication, defined by theorist James Greening as a process of thinking through the current mission of the organization, thinking through the current environmental conditions, and then combining these elements by setting forth a guide for tomorrow's decisions and results. So considered one of the most effective forms of organizational communication, strategic management advises that the organization considers all factors at play before making a strategic plan, which is what we did in this case. So the team first began at the conceptualization stage. So once a week, my colleagues and I on the public affairs team, which I work on, would meet with our counterparts on the RGS team, a representative from creative services who handles all of our web requests and web postings, and then a representative from language services who handles all of our translations at the agency. And we began to discuss how this project looked and how would it be carried out. So one large live stream for all the institutions involved wouldn't be feasible, as it probably wouldn't be possible to have thousands of students and fellows in a single Zoom session such as this. So the group concluded that our mission and purpose was to produce quality instructional material that would closely mimic what we had for a live presentation and what it had looked like in the past. So given this restricted timeframe that I previously mentioned, our goal was to deliver this effectively without compromising our final product, and that it was critical that our output met the requirements and the needs of our stakeholders, who were the students and fellows that would generally attend these types of conferences. So further, the team had to consider the accessibility of our product again for our stakeholders. So given the unique circumstances of the coronavirus pandemic, not all students and fellows would be able to attend a planned video conference. Additionally, Enserp offers a wide variety of programs and grants, and each of them has their own details and requirements. So the decision was made to hold multiple smaller conferences for the different regions of the country. Instructional videos would support these video conferences as a means for students and fellows to refer back to if they needed any additional information. Upon finalization of our framework and our stakeholders came the bulk of the work. So each video would be comprised of a script and a PowerPoint deck, otherwise known as slides. And then both would have to be professionally translated into French by our language services team, as we are a federal agency, and everything that we do put out has to be in both official languages. So once the script and the PowerPoint have been translated, a member of the RGS team would then film a voiceover for each corresponding slide of the PowerPoint deck, and then it'll be uploaded to our YouTube page. So, and then this YouTube page, the playlist will be circulated throughout the research community. So in the end, about 47 videos and 325 PowerPoint slides were produced, I think in the span of about 2 months. So you can imagine how much work actually went into that. All right, so Top Researchers, or Enserp Prizes 2020, is the other large project that I worked on as well. And it's the largest event that Enserp facilitates every year. So through this event, Enserp celebrates examples of research excellence through a wide variety of prizes, awarding accomplishments such as innovative discoveries by young researchers or lifetime achievement awards. The ceremony is typically held at Rideau Hall, hosted by the Governor General, with a reception to follow in May. But due to the pandemic this year, the event was pushed back to November and was online like everything else that's happening nowadays. So in this capacity, I was tasked with organizing and updating the guest list and facilitating the social media plan, both in English and in French. So again, this year was drastically different due to situations outside of our control. So the planning team began to consider how this event would look in our current context. So given the fact that this was our most important event of the year, the planning committee wanted to be sure that we put all of our resources towards producing a product of the highest quality possible. So together we reviewed live streams of things that we had done earlier in the year, such as our World Oceans Day live stream and our Science Literacy Week live stream, analyzing the successes and taking note of the things that we could have done differently in the past. So the team ultimately concluded that outsourcing to a company who specializes in things such as online events would give us the quality that we were looking for in the end. All right, so I hope everyone can see this. This is an example of the social media plan that I worked on. Just a little bit of a snippet. It's actually, I think, almost 20 pages, so you can imagine. So each post had a designated date and time. As some of them will be posted leading up to the event, and then some during and some in the days following. So as you can see, each tweet had an English version, and then we would send it up to language services, and it'll be translated into French. And then Each post will also have some sort of corresponding media, whether that be an image, a link, a video, or something of that nature. So two different types of text were needed for both Twitter and Facebook. The Facebook texts were a lot similar to the Twitter text, except for the fact that Facebook doesn't really have a word limit. So there was a lot more space to add a lot more detail and a lot more, I guess, color in your language. So in sum, Enserp Prizes 2020 was, in the end, considered a success. The live stream was viewed by hundreds of people, and the honorees were still able to feel celebrated despite our online circumstances. Right, so following the event, I was tasked with compiling a social media report, highlighting the posts that gained the most traction. So as you can see, the report was split up into 3 parts. So the first part was notable tweets from our official Twitter account. The next part was notable tweets from other Twitter accounts, whether that be, I guess now former Minister Baines, and different news outlets as well, and different universities. And then finally, the things I noticed on Facebook as well. So as you can see, as Twitter received the most traction and gained the most prominence in the report. So this report just gave an idea to upper level management of how the event did online through our social media accounts. So just some reflections about this co-op experience. I definitely agree with Delphine. It was definitely a very interesting and a very weird experience doing everything online. But in the end, I learned a great deal working at Enserp. So the first work term came with a wide array of triumphs and challenges. Due to the pandemic, working in an office-like setting without a physical space to collaborate with my coworkers and share ideas and bounce thoughts off each other proved to be a very weird experience. The added stress of being a new employee in a completely digital environment meant trying to find my footing in uncharted territory. As the pandemic continued to worsen throughout the fall into the winter, I, however, became more comfortable with the files I was given and became more familiar with my colleagues, which led to larger tasks being assigned as a result. Being a student in such a large federal workplace can be very daunting, as I learned in the beginning. However, I was lucky enough to have 2 very supportive supervisors who led me through all the files that I was given, and also very supportive colleagues who were more than happy to answer any questions I had or to incorporate me in any projects that they were working on. So this work experience provided a real life example of the concepts I had learned in class and that I will be able to apply to any job I may or may not have in the future. My biggest takeaway from this virtual experience is that the profession of communication can be done basically anywhere. The development of the internet, more specifically, especially as I saw with social media, has become one of the biggest influences on communication. So information can now be disseminated faster than ever and is at your fingertips in a matter of seconds. So social media, coupled with the ongoing coronavirus pandemic, has forced communication deeper into the digital age, and this was illuminated more than ever throughout my experience working as a co-op student at Enserp. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you for that wonderful presentation. Est-ce qu'il y a des questions? All right, I'll go. Oh, we have one in the chat. Diane says, what are you doing now in your part-time work?
Oh, good question. So as you saw, those 2 projects are now completed. Right now, I actually just finished, I did an interview with a researcher from Simon Fraser University who is doing some really cool COVID research. Basically, generally what he has developed is an RNA aptamer. I know we're not science students here, so it might be a little bit confusing, and it took a long time for me to understand what he was talking about. But basically, he works with RNA, and he has developed like an RNA detection kit. So he's hoping to develop it to use it to detect other infectious diseases. So because I work for a scientific federal agency, a lot of the work I do has to do with science things. So I did a really cool article on his research and on RNA. So that just ended, and we're also moving locations currently. We're in the process of moving from our current location, which is in downtown Ottawa. So I've also been working on the workplace renewal team, just trying to help with the internal communications and communicating with staff about how the move is going to work. So those are the 2 main things I'm working on right now.
Great. Does anybody else have a question? You can pose it in the chat or unmute your mic. Jean-Sébastien?
Yeah, so thank you for the presentation, and perhaps it's kind of a self-serving question, but having to plan, you know, a communications campaign from home and whatnot, what do you think are some perhaps of your key takeaways that we could implement in a university environment, given that we still have to, you know, work and study from home for at least a few months?
Well, that's a good question. I wouldn't say the ease of planning an event online, but I think when we were so accustomed to doing things face-to-face, no one really considered how accessible having an online event in tandem, maybe with whatever you're doing in person, could be for people. So I think one of the things we could take away from this experience of having to do everything online is that it's still beneficial to have that opportunity that you can still facilitate certain things online and that people can go back and reference to. So it just increasing the accessibility of whatever events that you might be doing or over what class you're hosting or something along that line.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Okay, so thank you again, Kwame, for that presentation. It was very interesting and sounds like a great position.